in the hospitality industry and 10 years now working in the wine industry. I wanted to create a space and a platform for initially for women to feel like they had a network of inspiring people to connect with, that they had a space to discuss a lot of the issues that they were experiencing as far as really being welcomed and fitting into the industry and having access to opportunities and leadership. And so we launched our first conference in person. I'm based in Austin, Texas. And so we did it in person here in Austin. And the energy and the stories and the dialogue that came out of that first event really solidified the need to really launch into a full nonprofit organization to continue to try and do this work and hold these conversations. And so we ended up rebranding earlier this year in January of 2021, just after after a lot of changes have been happening, not only in the wine industry, but within, our country. We all know what happened last year in regards to everyone being at home, but also really just a refiring of the Black Lives Matter movements. And we felt it was important and no longer acceptable to just advocate for women, that we really needed to be using our platform to advocate and for anyone that's ever, experienced marginalization or has been intentionally ignored in the wine industry. And so we rebranded to Lift Collective with the understanding that, this is a collective effort, that we are a community-centered organization that really understands that not one person can, make all the difference in the world. We all have our part to play, but that we are better and stronger together. And so we are now in our third year of doing this work.
Super, that's great. And again, I know since I sort of in the same space that you are, it's a lot of work, and it's not just a lot of work in terms of effort, but it's also, there's a lot of emotional labor that goes into it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that people, I think that we're all in a way having a reckoning that there's an emotional labor that actually goes into a lot of things. And as we've discussed before, that we need to pay more attention to that, and also how mental health impacts the work that we do.
Yeah.
And in our industry, that's definitely something that needs to be addressed, especially since it revolves around an alcoholic beverage, which throws a wrench into it too.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, well, we can get back to some of that later on. But let's talk about Texas. So you're a native Texan, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. I was actually born in San Francisco, but I grew up mostly in Houston, and then moved to Austin about 7.5 years ago. So Texas is certainly my home, and my mother is also from here. So,
what brought you to Austin?
I was actually offered the opportunity to open up a restaurant here in 2014. And I never really spent any time in Austin. So growing up primarily in Houston, it was a bit of a culture shock coming here, and it's completely different than Houston. But I really love Austin. I love a little bit more of that small town vibe. I miss Houston and for many reasons, but Austin has really come to be home the past 7 years.
So a few weeks ago, when I was in Texas, and we met up in Austin, and I was in a few other parts of the state, but I was talking to someone, and she said that there really isn't basically, there were two things she said to me. One, she said, everyone loves Austin except for people from other parts of Texas. And then the other thing was that there are many different Texas. There are a lot of different, there's not just one Texas, there are a lot of different types of Texas. And I will say, from just having, within a week's time, having been in Austin, Fredericksburg, and Houston, yeah, I mean, there definitely is a lot of variety in the state. I think that, but there's sort of this, idea of what Texas is that a lot of people who are not from Texas have. And, that it's just this monolith. But in fact, Texas is very diverse.
Sure. I mean, if you think about, it's like the size of, like European country, like France or Spain, like how many regional differences are there if you're traveling around France? It's like so many different pockets, different subcultures. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, and for the last few years, people have been talking about Texas just becoming purple or eventually becoming blue state. And I think that's something that the Texas GOP has definitely been listening to, and is, very likely, that's, I would say that's what's been the motivation behind the voter suppression laws. Just realizing that in order to keep power, they're going to have to make it more difficult for people who are not likely to vote for them, which is pretty much people who are not white, people who are not young, people who are less likely to vote for them are people who are young. And I wonder, because like for me, I'm sitting here in San Francisco and we're like, oh God, well, thank God I don't live in Texas and have to deal with that. California makes it generally pretty easy for people to vote, although if Newsom is recalled, and I just can't go there.
Right. Let's not.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not go there. But there's been, you have this happening like that, and the voter suppression laws, and I guess Florida was the first state to really enact it, and then Texas followed suit right after that. Where Texas is the leader is in abortion, and now it is now the law in Texas where if a woman cannot have an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, which is considering that most women don't know that they're pregnant, because if you're 2 weeks late for your period, it's just like a skip period, or could be stress or something else. It pretty much is going to make abortion largely illegal. Like I heard that something 90% of all abortions in Texas occur after the 6 week period.
Right. Yeah, I think I saw around 85 to 90 from Planned Parenthood. I mean, and there are what makes this so unique is that this is not really, I mean, of course the state enacted it, but it's not, this is essentially creating for lack of a better term, like a vigilante sort of situation, right, where anybody who has any inkling that a person with a uterus needs to or is planning to get an abortion, even if they don't know for sure that is being carried out past that 6 weeks, that they have the right to essentially sue any individual who is aided in helping someone get an abortion or has had an abortion themselves. And so it feels, I don't know, I don't even know that there is a feeling for it. It's so surreal because I can't think of any other policies that even come close to mimicking this. And, there have been certainly some private companies that have stepped up to try and support to try to block this or combat it in some way, given whatever type of industry that they're in, whatever they can do. There are people taking action, but it still feels like these are a lot of small efforts that we're trying to kind of piece together to make real change and to provide hope for people here in Texas. And unfortunately, I will say that the mood is dim. It feels, I don't know, like I don't even know where I'm living, right? And then you have Mexico decriminalizing abortion this week. And so it's just, it's like on the other side of the border, it's so close. And I feel like we're worlds apart at this point.
I'll tell you, we need to do a really quick break, but we're gonna come back just to see that in just a second. Okay, we are back in studio with my guest on the phone is Rania Zayyat, who is the founder of the Lift Collective, as well as the wine director of Bufalina in Austin. And we're just talking about the abortion law in Texas, the most restrictive abortion law since Roe v. Wade passed in 1973. And it looks like, especially considering that the Supreme Court, backed the law, where it looks like Roe v. Wade might be getting overturned. And I just want to read a quote right now from Governor Greg Abbott, where he said, "Rape is a crime, and Texas will work tirelessly that we eliminate all rapists from the streets of Texas by aggressively going out and arresting them and prosecuting them and getting them off the streets." So do you think he's just not, is he missing the point here? I mean, doesn't he realize that that a bill like this is just enabling toxic masculinity and misogyny, and that it's, it's a law that allows men to control women's bodies? And if anything, I think this is going to contribute to rape culture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think first of all, just say that can I cuss on this?
Oh no, there are 5 words you're not allowed to say.
Okay.
I'll put them in the chat, but you might be able to.
No, that's fine. I'll just use my regular words. Obviously, yeah, I think that's more than, beyond, oh, those are good words. Okay. Beyond, terms like misogyny and the patriarchy, I think that this really has to do with white supremacy culture, colonialism. There are so many like isms that this can be tied to, but really this is just about oppression in general, and stripping away bodily autonomy from people. And this is, you're restricting their right to vote. You're restricting what we can and can't do with our bodies. And specifically as somebody, as a party who really has no idea, they don't, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I'd be so emotional having this conversation with you, but it's really hard to formulate clear thoughts when all I want to do is kick and scream.
But that you're allowed to do on the radio.
Yeah.
You just can't say those 5 words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, thank you for spelling that out.
Yeah. You can scream.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that this contributes to rape culture. I mean, especially in a country where I think that rape culture and has certainly not been adequately addressed. This is not going to, by any means, stop it. There really isn't adequate protection for rape victims in this country anyway. And I just feel like, just don't, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. No, take your time. Yeah. Yeah. It is. I think it is a very emotional issue for a lot of people, because no sooner that this law kind of passed through the Texas legislature than other states are now trying to pass similar laws. And right. So I think that my guess is that throughout most of the South and parts of the Midwest and some other states too, there are going to be very similar laws. And I've got to say that to think that, oh, I live in California, I'm safe. Well, I see what's happening with the recall here. Mm-hmm. And I find it extremely upsetting that the right wing, GOP, just the craziness of it. I'm not talking about, I do think that it's probably in the single digits, but I think that there are sane Republicans that, mm-hmm. But it's just with the way the party's gone. I don't want them touching the state, mm-hmm. And it really upsets me, the fact that like this recall's happening, and it's cost the taxpayers like billions of dollars
Mhm.
for this. I mean, in general,
Mhm.
I'm against recalls, and now we're going off topic here, but in general, I'm against recalls. If you vote someone in and they're doing a bad job, like just don't vote for them next time, unless they like break the law, and then there's means for getting rid of them then. But I just find I think it's just another way that the current Republican Party is trying to undermine our democracy. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I know honestly, we're really supposed to stay away from politics on the show, or on community radio. And I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is all angels, but I think what our higher calling is to have a democratic system in place. And
Absolutely.
when I see things that are happening, such as what's going on in Texas and other states with voter suppression, which also, let's face it, those laws are also aimed at women, because it's harder very often when you have a family where there's a heterosexual couple with children. Even if both parents work, it still is often where the mother is taking on more child care responsibilities, especially when kids are young. So it's
Mhm.
often harder for women to get away to break. I mean, like, anyway, I feel like these laws are that the abortion bill, voter suppression, I think they do have misogynistic undertones. And honestly, I mean, I'll just say it. A lot of us have been over the last few years watching The Handmaid's Tale, and I start to think, is that so unusual? Could that happen here?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I think that The Handmaid's Tale certainly, primarily portrays white women. And I think that this bill really disproportionately affects and is harmful to people of color, to the LGBTQ community, to, low income citizens of the state, people who live in rural areas or medically underserved areas. I mean, this really has a big impact, and to me is showcases almost equally more racist tones as it does, misogyny, because of who and how it impacts. This is not going to, as we know, this is not going to stop people from getting an abortion. It just simply provides less access to people who need it and who can't otherwise afford to travel out of the state, and take time off of work and maybe get childcare and all of the expenses that can incur when you have to leave, when you need when you have either a medical emergency or a serious procedure. And so it just really, this is not just, a women's issue. I will say that anyone with a uterus can get pregnant. I think it's important to note that. But, Texas is really one of the top states in the country for women entrepreneurs as well. So if we want to think about how this is going to impact economics and businesses here, I mean, you are really stripping away rights, human rights, for half of your entrepreneurs in this state. How is that going to affect business? How is that going to affect people that are considering moving into Texas to take work? I know that there have already been some surveys done that have shown that a lot of people, millennials, women, people from the Latin community, Black persons of color, feel strongly about not moving to this state now because of such restrictive, voting laws, of course, but also now because of SB 8. And I think that this is completely short-sighted. If, as a state that really, I think, tries to thrive and pride itself on economics and business, like this is really just not in the best interest of the community. And also, if we can even narrow in a little bit on the hospitality industry, we know that a lot of low income professionals work in, hospitality and retail are two of the top sectors for uninsured and low income workers. And now people who already don't have access to simple health care, who can't take time off of work or choose not to because they can't afford to. It's just, this is just going to be a snowball effect. And I think that you touched on that a minute ago with saying, other states are already starting to rise up and see what type of legislation they can enact as well.
Yeah, right. And those states, I suspect Texas's neighbors are probably on the list of those states, so that if somebody were to, let's say, maybe be able to get a couple of days off from work and go to Louisiana or Oklahoma, that they're still going to have the same obstacle.
Right. I mean, and it's not like getting an abortion was like easy prior to SB8, right? It was already very difficult because you have to have 2 appointments. You have to wait 24 hours in between each one. It's like, if you can even, a lot of clinics were already shut down the past few years. And so the number of clinics that were available, as we just mentioned, like Texas is the size of a country, getting, if you live in a rural area, even being able to get to a clinic required days of travel sometimes, being able, having to be put up somewhere, so many things.
Right. So what we're looking at is having a return to back alley abortions, probably, back alley as a term, which, and yeah, I'm sure that there will probably still be some private doctors that people with means can afford to go to, although they need to be careful because of the bill allowing any citizen to essentially make an arrest for someone abetting someone who attempts to get an abortion. But for everyone else, there will be a return potentially to unsafe, unsanitary conditions, and that primarily affects low-income people and disproportionately people of color. So it is, as you said, it's a problem. Not just there's an intersectionality to this problem, where there's the component of racial injustices as well as gender injustice that we have here. So we know this. The question is, what can we do about it? Like you mentioned that I know there are some companies that have criticized it, but does that mean they're not doing business? Like the city of Portland said, I guess their city's going to boycott Texas products, and they're also not going to do any more business in Texas. And I don't know if San Francisco has followed suit or not, but I did read that about Portland. But at the end of the day, like, is that going to make a difference? And like, are there enough companies that really are willing to forego one of the biggest markets in the country?
Yeah. I think that only time will tell. I think right now, platforms like GoDaddy, for instance, blocked, an anti-abortion, essentially an anti-abortion website called Texas Right to Life, for people that were suspicious or wanted to report on people that they thought were, having or aiding in an abortion. You have Uber and Lyft, of course, that stepped up to pay legal fees for any of their drivers who might get sued by knowing or unknowingly driving someone to a clinic. I think Bumble and Match, 2 of the dating websites, have launched funds to support reproductive rights and support some of the nonprofits here, like the Lilith Fund and Avow and Planned Parenthood. But I feel like we're only a week in, and we need to keep. I don't think that. I hope that this isn't just something that people forget about and kind of move on with their lives, because this is only the beginning, right? So I think only time will tell, but I hope that there's so many causes to support, to donate to right now. And I feel like it's hard to be everywhere at once. But for those that do have the means to give, people still need abortions. They still need access to basic primary healthcare. And so anyone that is able to support some of these nonprofits, that's, I feel like that is the biggest thing that you can do right now, especially because a lot of these funds are going to be needed to hopefully to try and get people out of the state, right? So it's going to require a lot more money. There are going to be lawsuits, I'm sure, that have already been filed and will continue to be filed. Our organization, we did a fundraiser this past weekend to support the Lilith Fund, which is the oldest organization in Texas fighting for reproductive rights. And, we were able to raise almost $7,500 in about 3 days, which was amazing. And I know that there are many other small businesses that are putting together either fundraisers or donating percentages of proceeds to these organizations. So I would encourage everyone, please keep giving if you can, because the needs are not changing.
Yeah, no, that is true. And so most of the funding then is going to try to help women who want abortions, or not most of the funding, but significant portion of it, to get out of state then.
I feel like that is really the only viable option at this time, but I also do not work in healthcare. So yeah.
Well, it's almost like everyone who, is every person or everyone who has a uterus should, and is sexually active should probably have like a home pregnancy testing just in case at this point.
Yeah, I don't even know that those are really completely effective even before, because it's and even that costs, a lot of money for some people.
Yeah, no, of course it does. Well, have you seen, in the wine industry in Texas, and especially in Austin, are there any movements to try to band together to do something about it? Because I could see where, let's say, if there's a big boycott Texas movement, well, not everyone in Texas is on board with what's going on there. So, you can end up in, really hurting the people. You can end up hurting workers, and also hurting people who don't agree with it. So, are there, you mentioned donations, giving donations. Is there anything else that you think people who can do to try to change the situation?
I wish that I had more answers. I think over time, hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll start to see more opportunities. I know that there are certainly going to be some marches nationwide, and like at the NDC, and then also in individual states. I think on October 2nd, that was organized by Women's March. But I would say for everyone, if you can find some way to be involved, to take action. Obviously calling legislators is one thing, but I wish there were more answers. I honestly have not seen that much information out there about ways to support aside from donating right now. But if you are the owner of a company and you feel like there's something that you can be doing as a business owner, I would encourage people to take action in whatever ways that they can.
Yeah, great. I'll tell you, let's take a quick break right now, and then let's change subjects and talk about natural wine in Texas when we get back. How's that?
Oh, that sounds fun. Okay.
Okay. Well. Okay, we are back at the studio. This is Pamela Bush. The show you're listening to is Fifth Wave Radio / Queerly Drinking on KXSF.FM in San Francisco. And my guest is Rania Zayyat, who is the founder of Lift Collective, based in Austin, as well as the wine director and managing partner of Bufalina. So when I went to Bufalina a few weeks ago, and this is before we even met, and I didn't know that you were a partner there or the wine director, I was like, wow, there's a great wine list here. Lots of natural wine. There's so much I want to drink. I'm with two other people, but still we can't drink everything on this list. And then it was really cool going around Austin and seeing how, granted, it's a small city, but what's the population of Austin?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
I actually don't know.
Well,
I want to say it's a little over 1 million.
No, I'm pretty
Maybe.
sure. I don't know, because San Francisco's population is around 700,000 or something. The whole Bay Area is obviously a lot more than that. But Austin's a small city.
Oh, no, it's close to 1 million.
Really?
Yeah, about
Okay.
950,000.
All right, I stand corrected. Well, so there you go. And it's also a city where there's been a lot of migration to Austin and to other parts of Texas as well, and that over time probably will change the politics of the state too. It's just going to take time. But I was really blown away by a couple of things. I was blown away by that there's a gas station that sells natural wine. I know,
Yeah.
right? And also that there was like more vegan food in Austin than there is in San Francisco. Now, I'm not saying this to diss on San Francisco. San Francisco, I love you. But there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening down there. And how have you found that natural wine has been accepted in your journey?
I think I was very fortunate when I entered into the natural wine space. I come from a traditional wine background. I worked at a steakhouse for many years in Houston, selling a lot of big, cabs, Bordeaux, all of that. So for me, I started working with natural wine about, I would say, 5 years ago, which was right around the time, slightly before I started working for Bufalina. And there were only a few people in town at that time that were working with those wines, as there really weren't many distributors carrying the wines here in Texas. That market was still predominantly in, on the coasts, right? So it really hadn't come to Texas yet. And my husband actually was one of the buyers here in Austin. That was one of the first people to really start working with natural wines. And so I kind of got my introduction to them by just tasting wines that were on his list and him bringing them home and blind tasting me on them. And at the time, it's kind of funny because I remember sort of recognizing this flavor in a lot of the wines that he would blind taste me on. And I would say, oh, this is a natural wine, isn't it? It kind of has this like nuttiness thing to it, which now I associate with mousiness, which is kind of funny. And I'm not saying that to say that natural wines are all mousy.
And can you explain
I was going to say
by mousiness? I know, but
yeah. It is. It's one of the primary flaws, I think, associated with some natural wines that essentially on your palate, it kind of tastes, unfortunately, like a mouse, the way that mouse cage smells, or like crushed peanut shells, or it tastes like really nutty. And it can be in some very small or large amounts, but it's definitely considered to be pretty off-putting, I would say. And so, yeah, it's a flaw.
But there are people and there are places that where you can find lots of that like it, and that's something to me. Like, I totally get that. I mean, taste is very subjective, and if everybody liked the same wine, we'd all be screwed because there wouldn't be enough to go around. So, like, that's cool, but there is something to. I think that, let's say, most people can agree that if something smells like poop, it smells like poop. Okay. So I still don't really get the whole light enjoying wines that are super mousy. And like, if it's just there's a trace of it here and there, it's like I could tolerate that. But then there are the wines that and another thing too is if a wine is mousy, it's not like it blows off. It just
it usually gets worse.
Right. Yeah. So there, it's sort of like there's the kind of the people who are like the 0-0, mafia. A 0-0 meaning nothing added to the wine, nothing taken away, no sulfur, and just really wine that is made in the way that it was made, a couple hundred years ago, let's say, or even 100 years ago. And there's honestly, like, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't really have, if people want to drink massy wine, I think that's fine. It's just, I think what's happening is that there's almost like a generation of wine drinkers that are that are being weaned on this. And like that, and don't really have experience with other wines. Like, for instance, you said you came from more of the classical wine world, and I've been in the industry for 31 years. So I've basically tasted thousands and thousands and thousands of lots of different kinds of wine. And I've have had all the first growths from Bordeaux and the highly coveted wines throughout the world.
Right.
I don't necessarily need to taste them again.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have a chance to try that, just having a benchmark. And I think even having a benchmark of what like really good natural wine should, is, and when I say good, I mean that where you don't have a flaw, whether it's mousiness or Brettanomyces, or that completely overtakes the wine. Like, to me, a wine is flawed if all you really get are the flaws and you're not getting anything else. It's one thing if, okay, it has some Brettanomyces, which often gives like that kind of barnyardy quality that people get in wine. Or let's say if there's a little volatile acidity, which is that sort of like a vinegary sort of character that sometimes you get in wine, or like a nail polish remover character. It's not really, sometimes if there's a little bit in it, it's not the end of the world. Like Chateau Moussard is always riddled with BA and is riddled with bread, and it's still absolutely delicious and ages really well. But I don't know very many people in the natural wine world these days who even know what Chateau Moussard is, let alone have tasted it.
Right.
And I think that is, I don't think it's a service, or as a service, that's not the right way of putting it. I had this discussion with, I've had this discussion with other people. And it's like, is there wrong with just knowing natural wine and knowing nothing else? No, I don't think there is anything wrong with it if you're just drinking it and you're a consumer. If you're a professional, though, I do think you do need to know what conventional wine is all about, because you're going to have people who are conventional wine drinkers who are going to want to buy wine from you or take a recommendation from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has been certainly the biggest, my biggest asset moving into working with natural wines, because, as you kind of got a glimpse of at Bufalina, from the beginning, our owner, he loves Burgundy, and has certainly, he initially put together a really amazing list that had this really great balance of, kind of the extreme natural wines of the day. This was like in 2013. So, the Frank Cornelisons of the world, and then also had a really amazing balance with some really incredible Burgundies, high-end Burgundies that still also happen to be, that are still natural wines, naturally produced. And, as the list has grown, that has always been an important component of balancing our wine program. And it's to show that there is a spectrum of natural wine as well. It's not all, 0-0 flawed, crazy funky wines, that are maybe slightly fizzy when you open the bottle, or explosive pet nats. Like, that's not what they're all about. That there are really, I think, classically flavored wines, but that are made in sustainable ways, either with organic or biodynamically farmed fruits, and finding or filtering, maybe very minimal SO2 sulfur at bottling, but really, other than that, like a very hands-off approach to winemaking. And what I really liked about transitioning from Houston to Austin was that I felt like the clientele here was a little bit younger, a little bit more adventurous. They were looking to spend less on a bottle of wine overall, which there are a lot of incredible value bottles in natural wine that, sit at less than $100 on a wine list.
Right, but then it was like, yes, sit at less than $100 on a wine list. But the other side is like, from a retail perspective, you do hear a lot of people say you can't find a natural wine for under $20, which, we're in the industry, so $20 doesn't seem like that much. But if you think about the average consumer, they're not spending $20 on a bottle of wine. So it does seem like a lot. And that $20 bottle of wine, let's say you're even a $25 bottle of wine retail, it's still going to be over $50 on the wine list.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that at least the research I've done with millennials and how they shop for wine is $20 is that sweet spot. And then, there is a percentage that will spend really up to $30. But I think even within that category, as we're starting to get more access to these wines in Texas, and even in the US, I'll say, but primarily in the Texas market, that there are more offerings. We have on our e-commerce, bufalinawine.com, we have a whole section of wines that are $25 and under. We do a happy hour every single day for half off bottles under $100. So people can come in and really take advantage of, any bottle that's like $99 or less and get it for half price. And so creating those opportunities for people to be a little bit more experimental, and really just get outside of their comfort zone. And then, of course, we've also seen a large influx of wine clubs, especially since the start of the pandemic. I launched one at the restaurant that has been very successful. It still is, but it's a great way to get people to try things as well that they wouldn't otherwise try, and all while keeping it in a price point that I think is, wine is still, I would say, a luxury product, right? It's not if we're being honest, it's not anything that we need, depending on who you are. But it is something that I think people have kind of started to incorporate a little bit more into their budget.
Yeah, we need to take another quick break, and then we'll come back in a minute. And welcome back. You are listening to Fifth Wave Radio, Queerly Drinking. This is Pamela Bush, and I have my guest is Rania Zayyat, who is the founder of Lift Collective and also the managing partner and wine director at Bufalina in Austin, Texas. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from Austin's the voting laws, the abortion law, and now we're talking about natural wine. So I do want to sort of tie this all in a way. I know that you said that one of the reasons why you started the Lift Collective was because of what you saw as the discrimination, the sort of the toxic atmosphere toward women. And again, that is a reason why I started the Vanguard, and I've been doing a lot of things that I've been doing too. Do you think that we're starting to see a change? And I say this specifically within natural wine. And let me just give a little background here. To say, like, I can't say there was a time when I got into natural wine. I've always been into it. It's just it wasn't called natural wine. And because there were very few of them, I had a lot of other wines too, then tried to find those that were not manipulated, or the least manipulated. But over the last 10 years, I've seen in the Bay Area, I think it started out when the natural wine movement, where it was just a lot of people who were idealistic and they were just sick of tasting stuff that was like really manipulated. But over I'd say from 20, whatever, let's say the last 10 years or so, within the Bay Area, there was this a toxic atmosphere, I think, started to rise within the natural wine community, where there was tons of misogyny. And that to me made it, I was like, what, these guys are younger than I am. They're in their 20s and 30s. How, like, aren't they schooled in this? It wasn't just that, but it was sort of a perpetuation of this like white elite cool kids club. With everything that's in it, and what's been happening over the last couple of years, it's definitely has I think maybe it's subdued it, maybe it hasn't. I honestly, I don't know. But what I have seen is that as more people are getting into natural wine, more women are getting into natural wine, more non-binary people are getting into it, more people of color. I think it's maybe just drowning some of that out a little bit. At least that's the experience here in the Bay Area, where I feel like if you're into natural wine, there are actually places where you could go now and avoid that scene, where a few years ago you really couldn't. But that's the Bay Area. What's it like in Austin?
I think that our community in Austin
I
is
can't hear you.
Oh, I'm
Hold on.
I'm here.
Oh wait.
We all
Oh wait.
good?
Oh, okay. There you go. Thanks. Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
We had a technical glitch here.
Yeah. No, I think that the Austin community wine community has always been really, I think, progressive and just very welcoming. There are a lot of great people in the city that are working in this sector of the industry that I think really do prioritize, activism, supporting, and working towards creating a more sustainable industry, socially, economically, environmentally. I will say that, going to France and being at wine fairs like Le Dive and the other, Anonyme, that is a totally different experience. And it feels like kind of the same, like, I mean, wine tastings in general, I think have always created a really difficult scenarios for, I would say primarily for, women and people of color, and really anyone who's not cis white, able-bodied male.
And why is that, in your opinion?
I think that, at least and I'll just say for my personal experience, I've always noticed that it's been hard to get up to the table if you're not like loud and kind of being willing to use your body to like move through crowds of people to like be visible and be known, which, as women, I think, and as for a lot of people, we are taught to be small and to not take up space. So that can be already somewhat of a challenging scenario. But then even when you do get up to the table, I found that when I ask questions or try to engage, that the responses that I get are kind of dumbed down a bit, or I'm dismissed, and it has never, or you're getting, the wrong kind of attention, right? And you're only being viewed as a body, and not as a person or as a wine professional. So it can be equally frustrating in that regard. But I did find that the switch from the conventional to the natural wine world in those specific circumstances just felt like, for lack of a better, like old dicks versus young dicks. And it was just kind of
that actually is a word that you can say on radio, but yeah.
I didn't see that in the list. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think you can, but no, I know what you mean. It's like the old boys club becomes like the young bros club.
Right.
Yeah. So you found that there was more of it in the natural wine world than the conventional wine world. That
I would say it seemed about the same, for sure. But again, I think that does not relate to my community here. I think that Austin has a really great, very, I would say, welcoming wine community. Certainly there are areas to improve on, but I would say within natural wine, I think it's a pretty great community.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, Austin, I said, I think it's one of the best places, best cities. Now that I know it's an even bigger city than San Francisco, in the country. But insofar as the culture of natural wine is concerned, I'd like to think it's changing. I know that people who have been among the offenders, frankly, I haven't heard that much from them, but we've all been for the last year and a half, in various forms of a lockdown, or business has been going on as usual. And that's changing. We even with COVID still spreading, businesses they're getting back up on their feet, which, thank God, and moving on. And I wonder, let's say, if things continue to open up and be open, what sort of atmosphere we're going to have. As we were in a conversation earlier today about, is it people are just doing something because of the moment, but once everyone is kind of back to work, are we still going to be paying attention to these issues? And or is that sort of the that culture that privileges cisgender white men, is that still going to be as in effect as it was before? And I guess we'll see. We don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I am very optimistic about the future, and I think that there is no going back to pre-2020. Too much has happened. Too much work has been done. There are more voices joining the conversation every day, and I feel like we're I won't say that we're in a great place, but I do feel like the more people that we can bring into this work, into creating change, the brighter the future will be.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you there. I am optimistic. I think I don't think we're going back to where we were pre-2020, but I think that we need to be really vigilant about it.
Yeah.
And realize that there were just so many things within our industry and many other industries that were just not working before, and that need to be corrected. And that's so much of, that people need to give something up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I bet, we shall see it. We've spent a lot of time today talking about Texas politics and just issues within Texas politics, not really the politics themselves. I think it's very frustrating because there are these big issues and you think, what can I do? I could, you could send a check to, Lilith or to Planned Parenthood, but it's what you can do is something within your own sphere of influence. That's where you can have the most impact, is on your, the local level, the field you work in.
Absolutely.
And you're doing it. So I want to thank you for that. We're just about out of time, but thank you for being here today. And thank you for all of the work that you do. Again, my guest is Rania Zayyat, who is the founder of the Lift Collective and the managing partner and wine director at Bufalina in Austin, Texas. If you go to Austin, definitely check out Bufalina. The pizza is absolutely terrific. And as a New Yorker, I think I have a little authority on that one. But yeah, it's great stuff. So Rania, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. And for everyone else who's listening in, I'll be back next week. I'm still working on the guest list for this, but I think it's going to be a really fun show. I don't want to say anything till everything is confirmed. But again, next Tuesday, we will have Fifth Wave Radio and then Freely Drinking. And until then, I'm going to leave everybody with a little music, and hope that you have a good rest of your Wednesday. We're good.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, no, you can you don't have to worry right now about talking. We're off the radio.
Okay.
Well, between the meeting earlier and this, I'm kind of I just feel like I need a drink.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Sorry, I was I won't apologize, but it definitely was, I felt like it was hard for me to articulate anything clearly at the beginning of the conversation.
No, I think you were great, and I think that you showed what an emotional issue it is.
Yeah.
And so there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to apologize for that. And I'm sorry if I said anything that was triggering to you.
No. It's important to talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it is. But I do want to be sensitive to the fact that, it can sometimes be a little bit too much for people. So my apologies. How did you feel about the meeting, by the way?
Today, I mean, I thought it was great. I didn't really know who was behind a lot of the writing, so it was great to see some familiar faces like John and Jane.
Yeah, they're terrific.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
great. So, but I thought it went well. I mean, I think that I don't know. I think that I hope that you feel satisfied with the feedback that you got. But I think honestly, to me, it seems like it's in a really good place
Yeah.
to move forward with launching. And yeah, how did you feel about it?
So I feel okay. You know, we might get cut off because I'm out of power, but yeah, I think I think it was good. You know, Mariam's the one person there who I have not met before, so I really would love to kind of get more of her impressions on it too. But yeah, you know, but this is an evolving process. I think it was really just to try to introduce everyone and, you know, help try to get the ball rolling, and we're going there. But yeah, no, I think that it's at a point though where it definitely needs more stakeholders. It needs more people to get involved in it. You know, and diverse people. And, you know, I'm hoping that some of the people, and perhaps you know, would want to become, you know, involved in the pledge as it moves forward, because as I said, it's not about any one organization and or people. And I think it really, you know, as it, you know, goes on, we do need fresh voices and fresh perspectives too. But I do feel good about it. You know, there was some really good feedback. Took some notes, and I think that, you know, there are some things that maybe we should add to it as well. You know, like questions buyers should be asking importers and distributors and winemakers about their wines.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was a really good point and suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I have honestly struggled with since the whole Valentina story broke, and like, what can I be doing? Because I feel like you can ask the questions, but then a lot of the times the answer is like, well, I'm not really sure. And then it's like, well, okay, like, do I just make it a point to say like, please know this in advance? But then also I'm not even tasting that much anymore because I mean, of the pandemic, kind of got out of the habit of tasting, of course. And then, you know, natural wine allocations are so fucking small anyway, that it's like, generally you're just trying to get what you can get before it gets snatched up by someone else if you want to, you know, maintain a competitive edge. And it's just like, it feels like it's getting more difficult. And so I know that certain importers like Zev and Superglue, and a few of them have really started to take basically enact like pledges and those types of commitments, but it still doesn't seem like it's happening on the scale that it should be, given the uproar of the Valentina thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, this would make a great discussion. Maybe we should do it. Zev's on our board, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah, but you know what? I think my computer's about to go to sleep, so I'd rather just say goodbye now than in mid-sentence.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, thanks again, and definitely like let's be in touch.
Okay, that sounds good.
I think that we should maybe add some of these, like put together a list of questions for buyers, or the buyers can ask them. Maybe if you're down, you can help out with that.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds
All right.
great.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Bye.